Shalom, this is Levi Shore. Welcome back to Sweet Good Torah. So we're proud to present today our first original story. It's called The Little Princess Who Sat on the Throne of the Queen. Okay, so what it's going to be. So there once was this cute little princess, and she lived in this amazing kingdom. And her Abba was the king. He was the Melech. And her Ima was the Malka. She was the queen. And they lived in a beautiful palace. And it was made of the most beautiful, clear and pure white marble. And around the windows and doors there was trim of gold and silver. And those beautiful, all kinds of beautiful precious gems and jewelry encrusted into the castle. Rubies and sapphires, diamonds, and every kind of jewel you can possibly imagine. And when the sun shone on the castle every day, it sparkled with brilliance. And the people of the kingdom, they loved the king and the queen, and they loved the little princess because they were always doing acts of gemilas chasadim, acts of kindness to all the people that lived in their kingdom. But what the little princess loved the most is the little princess loved to walk into the throne room, and she would see her Abba the Melech, the king, sitting on his throne, and she would see her Ima, the Malka, the queen, sitting on her throne. And they were beautiful golden thrones, and they were encrusted with every kind of jewel you could imagine, and they sparkled and they shined. But what the little princess loved most of all is she loved that sometimes people would come in from the kingdom and they were so sad, and their eyes were filled with tears, and sometimes they had a child that was sick, and sometimes a father didn't have enough money to pay his bills, and they had problems and heartaches. But the little princess loved to watch the queen get up from her throne, and she would come down and she would wipe away the tears of her people, and she would bring smiles and happiness and help the people of the kingdom with all of their problems. So one day the little princess came to the queen and came to the king and said to the king, Abba, how can I be like Ima? How can I grow up to one day be a beautiful queen? How can I help the people of the kingdom? How can I do these great acts of kindness? How can I turn tears into laughter and joy? So the king says, my little daughter, I will teach you how to do it. First, get a good night's sleep. So if you have children, you know this is not so easy all the time. But the little princess was so excited, she went to sleep quickly, believe it or not, that night, and woke up for the first day of her quest to become a queen. So first she ran to the king in the morning and said, Abba, how can I become a queen? He says, first, my daughter, go to the royal candle maker. So he ordered some of his servants to take the princess to the royal candle maker. And the royal candle maker made these beautiful golden menorahs to light up the room and gave them to the little princess. And then the servants took the little princess out into the fields, and they picked olives off the trees, and they brought them back to the royal olive oil, the oil maker, and he squeezed the olives, and he gave the princess jars and jars of olive oil that he had already made, the most purest and golden of olive oil. And she went to the royal wick maker, and he twisted these beautiful wicks made out of cotton and gave them to the little princess so they would light up these beautiful golden menorahs. And the little princess was overjoyed with happiness, and her Abba, the king, he kissed her on the forehead and says, you've done a great job on your first day, little princess. Now get a good night's sleep, and we'll start again tomorrow. And the little princess, once again, was so excited. She went right to bed. She was so tired from all her activities. And then she got up the next day and ran to the king and says, Abba, my father, the king, what can I do today to become such a great queen? And he says, okay, my daughter, I will send my servants to help you. And the servants led the little princess out into the fields, into the vineyards, and the little princess spent the day picking the grapes, and she brought them to the royal winemaker, and he squeezed the grapes and put them away in barrels to ferment into wine, and he gave her cask after cask, barrels after barrels of delicious, the royal wine that had already been made. And then he says, that is the drinks for the higher ones, for the people that have much height. But you must also buy drinks for the lower ones, the people that do not have so much height. And so the princess ran out to the market with the servants and bought sodas and fruit juices for the little ones, for the lower ones. And the higher ones had this delicious wine. And the little princess went again to the king, and he says, "My daughter, I'm so proud of you. You've done such a great job on your second day." And he kissed her goodnight, and she went to sleep. And then it was morning. It was the third day. And the little princess again ran to the king and said, "What shall I do today, Abba? What shall I do, my father, my king? What shall I do today to become this beautiful and kind queen?" He says, "My daughter, today you will go out to the fields. You will pick delicious fruits of every color and juiciness off the trees, and you will collect delicious vegetables of every color and variety from the fields, and you will collect them all and bring them back to our storehouse." And that's what the little princess did. And she spent all day, and she was so happy working with the servants, picking all kinds of fruits from the trees. She picked apples and oranges and pears and bananas and plums and pomegranates and all kinds of delicious vegetables like watermelon and gourds and pumpkins and cucumbers and tomatoes and onions and potatoes and everything she could find. And she brought them all back to the royal storehouse and ran to her father. And he says, "My daughter, I am so proud of you. You have done an amazing job," and kissed her on the forehead. And she went to sleep. And then she woke up the next morning so happy and ran to the king and says, "Ah, my daughter, we will begin day 4. You will love today. I want you to go with my servants to the markets, and I want you to buy beautiful tablecloths to spread over the royal banquet tables. And I want you to buy all kinds of sparkly, shiny objects to hang all over the banquet room to make everything shiny and sparkly." And that is what the little princess did. She ran to the market and bought all her favorite sparkly things and beautiful tablecloths to spread out across the tables. And the king kissed her and said, "I am so proud of you, my daughter. You're doing such a great job. You are becoming a beautiful and kind queen." And the little princess went to sleep excited and woke up the next day excited. And now it was the 5th day. He says, "Ah, today, my little princess, you will enjoy very much what I have to do with you." And he sent his servants in with fishing rods. And they went to the royal rivers near the palace, and they fished, and they brought up beautiful fish with fins and scales, of course, of all kinds of varieties and colors. And then went to the royal farms and captured, running around, chasing chickens, and capturing the royal chickens and bringing them all back to the palace. And the little princess was so happy, and she ran back to the king and says, "My father, my king, how did I do?" He says, he kissed her again. He says, "As always, my beautiful princess, you've done so well. Go to sleep, and it'll be our final day. You're almost there." So the little princess excitedly went to sleep. Can you believe it? 5 days in a row, a child went to sleep. Oh my gosh, how excited this child must have been. No fighting, no arguing, just right to bed and up the next day. And day 6, she ran to the king. Says, "What can I do today, king? How can I become the beautiful queen?" He says, "Today is the most special of all the days." So first the king sent his servants to take the little princess out to the market, and they bought the most delicious cuts of meat they could find, all kinds of varieties of meat, of course from animals that have split hooves and chew their cud. And then he sent her to the royal scribe, and they wrote in gold embossed ink beautiful invitations, and she sent it out to her favorite people in all the kingdom to invite them to the palace. And the king came to her and says, "My daughter, you have done so well. I have bought you this fancy new princess outfit." And it's this beautiful, sparkling gold dress. And he says, "You are almost there, little princess. One last thing to do." He says, "Please clean my throne room." And the little princess ran to the throne room, and she swept all the dust off the floor before the thrones, and she polished the king's throne and the queen's thrones until they sparkled and shined more than the sun. And then she ran back to the king and says, "It's almost time, my precious little princess. Now go, take a bath, anoint yourself with perfumes and oils, and get into your beautiful dress. Get into your princess dress." And the princess was so excited, she changed into her new sparkly blue dress, and she ran to the throne room. And then the 6th day ended, and then the king and the queen were sitting on their thrones, and the queen smiled with such nachas at her little daughter, and she got up from the throne, and she came, and the queen hugged and embraced the little princess and kissed her all over. And she says, "Oh, my little princess, I am so happy. You have become a queen, and we will celebrate this Shabbos. And we will have 3 great festival meals. We will have 3 feasts at the palace. And you, my little princess, will sit on my throne for all of Shabbos. And we will call you the Shabbos queen. And you will be the queen for all of Shabbos. And the king came and kissed the princess. And the queen kissed the princess again. And the little princess walked up the stairs to the queen's throne, was smiling and radiant and shining from her face. She's never been so happy. And the little princess sat in the queen's thrones for the 3 great festival meals of Shabbos. Shabbat Shalom. I hope you all enjoyed it. We hope to see you back again soon on Sweet and Good Torah.